So I'm going to presume that the people in the room at the city center have the chant books if they need them in order to do the refuge chant together as we get ready to begin in a moment. And it may seem somewhat foreign to folks to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. But remember, these are just Buddhist words representing something that is real for us. We just have to connect this ancient recitation, that might seem strange for some of you, with what is worthy of, for me, for each of us, placing my heart upon. What do I actually trust? Do we trust being awake and open, which is really a simple way of understanding that word Buddha? Do we trust connecting and even in a sense being exposed to the way things are, Dhamma? Awake, open to the way it is. And do we trust a way of participating in our lives, showing up in our world, in our interaction that really flows from that intimacy of being open, being intimate with the way it is? Because that's what we mean by Sangha. And it's such a beautiful thing, even if you're not that into ritual, but for a group of people to sing together about what's really important. It just seems like a really sweet way to open a class. And of course, like I mentioned, each of us, we have to make the ritual real for us. So it's satisfying and enlightening and brings up some positive energy for us. That's the point. So shall we do it? Yeah, let me paste it one more time for people who've just arrived on Zoom. Chanting the 3 refuges. Udang saranang gacchami dhammang saranang gacchami sangham saranang gacchami dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And making any last adjustments will settle in for our posture for the sitting time now. Inhabiting this moment, this experience of the sitting body, inhabiting the quality of the heart. Not afraid to feel. And we remember as we begin our sitting time that we very much are constructing our experience, constructing heaven, constructing hell realms for ourselves, moment by moment. So in that sense, we're not helpless. We get to participate. And the way we actively participate in the moment is how we pay attention and what we pay attention to. And even if we don't know right now how to construct a wholesome state for ourselves, set emotion, ease, for example, we can learn just through trial and error, just observing is what my mind is paying attention to and how it's paying attention. Is it leading to stress, stressful states, getting tied up into knots? Or right now is the way I'm relating to the present moment, what I'm paying attention to, how I'm paying attention, is it onward leading to release? So even if we had no previous experience observing the mind, we could learn how to find our way. We can bring right now at this time a wise attention to the present moment in a way that feeds wholesome qualities like kindness, attentiveness, non-distractedness, and starves the unwholesome qualities of mind like reactivity and distractedness. And of course, unfortunately, we'll also learn during those moments when there's what we could call an unwise attention, and the mind, because of this way of paying attention, is feeding stressful and unwholesome states and weakening the wholesome. Then we'll learn another important lesson, something like this is the road to hell. This is what causes constriction, disturbs the heart and mind. And this is specifically useful when we notice what's in the way of calm and ease, continuity of mindful awareness. Just to experiment feeding the wholesome, starving the unwholesome. So it's really this active engagement, an active moving beyond any habits we might have of being helpless with whatever mood, whatever experience is here. That there's really a way to actively shape the quality of the moment. We can plant wholesome seeds, and we can cease to plant unwholesome seeds. And it really makes a difference. And before we go to silence, just giving a real obvious example. If we're having a lot of doubt right now, or whatever context, there's ways to be relating to the doubt that will whip it up and make it more seductive, leading the mind into endless proliferation. But there's other ways of relating to doubt, the simple acknowledgement that it's just doubt being known, being felt. It's just the mind state that's arisen because of causes and conditions. It's not really personal. This is what doubt feels like, looks like. That kind of spacious acknowledgement, even naming of doubt, or whatever the afflictive state might be for you, moves the mind in the direction of release, less entanglement, not so much oppressed by the difficult state that's there. Just acknowledging it as something being known and being felt. But you have to actually try that to see how effective, how helpful it is. So let's continue now in silence for a while. Each of us doing the best to feed what is wholesome, to starve, to weaken what is not helpful, qualities of mind that are not helpful. So we're just practicing feeding what is wholesome through the way we pay attention and acknowledge, and we're weakening what's unwholesome, qualities of mind that are unwholesome, by seeing the unwholesomeness of those qualities clearly, without judgment, without fear, without aversion. Just seeing them for what they are is what weakens them. Seeing the wholesome for what they are strengthens. So in a sense, this is an active expression of compassion, just how we're paying attention right now. Can I care for this life in a really practical, actual way, just by how I'm paying attention, what I'm paying attention to? Can I plant seeds for happiness and release, and avoid planting seeds for stress and contraction? One of the things we can notice in a reflection like this is how much momentum, how deep the habit is for the mind to gravitate back toward dramas, paying attention to the drama with identification in ways that lead onward to more mental proliferation. Getting caught up in this, getting caught up in that drama. It's fair to say, I think, that the mind, our mind, has become addicted to the intensity of these dramas. Whether the drama involves wanting something or not wanting something, or the drama of being sleepy or dull or not wanting to be clear, or the drama of being restless and full of worry, or the spinning of doubt. Is it this way or is it that way? Am I a good meditator or a bad meditator? The image that's used in the tradition is of a dung beetle. These are beetles that feed on the dung of large mammals. And you could, out of compassion, pull the dung beetle away from the pile of poop, but the dung beetle wants to go back. It just would walk back toward it. Obsess. Think about things that lead onward toward more mental proliferation. So if you haven't already, begin to stretch and adjust the body. So you probably know that tonight we're going to be discussing doubt as the fifth of the 5 hindrances that the Buddha names: the wanting mind, the aversive mind, the dull, sleepy mind, the restless mind full of worry, and the mind that's caught in doubt. And remember the potent image that we've been using from the Buddhist tradition of the parasitic vines that start to grow in the tropics on the branches of big trees. Bird poops the seed out, and there's enough moisture in the air, enough debris there on the branch of the tree, the vine just starts to grow there and eventually drops roots down to the ground. And over many, many years, the vine keeps expanding and circling the original very big tree, and eventually completely encircles, so you can't see the original tree at all. It's all been taken over by the parasitic vine. So you might see these trees that can be as big, as expansive as city blocks, with many root systems that have dropped down and now look like trunks because they've gotten really thick. But it's really these encirculating vines, these parasitic vines, that have just taken over a number of trees over the course of probably decades. And that's the very potent image the Buddha uses for these tendencies. And it's very easy, when we catch ourselves indulging in some desire, or indulging in some gossip or some hate, self-righteousness, or indulging in a sexual fantasy, or indulging in some kind of nihilistic way of thinking, spinning with doubt, whatever it is that our habits might be. And when we remember the image of an encircling vine, or a dung beetle always hungry to go back to the pile of dung, it actually can interrupt, like create a little pause where we can be reflective. What kind of seeds are being planted in the mind right now? Am I actually planting seeds for wholesomeness and ease of heart and stability of the body and mind? Or am I planting seeds for disturbance and reactivity and heavy states of mind? And, interestingly, Buddhism, which is so much about understanding the impersonal nature of everything, is a very empowering practice. It does not lead to helplessness. The more we understand the practice, the more energy we have to be attentive. And, talking about it from a personal point of view, to take personal responsibility for the seeds we're planting and the seeds we're learning better not to plant. Maybe I won't spend 3 hours looking at that catalog, or these days, it's online. That mind state where we're just looking for something to watch. And then we'll kind of dig down. When could I get it? What color would I choose? Should I get 3 just in case one breaks? It's just, and when we're kind of filling up the space of the moment with these sorts of activities, it doesn't occur to us what kind of seeds we might be planting, tendencies we might be deepening in the mind. And especially doubt is so important because it's really one of the most toxic tendencies we have. This is from a short article that James Perez wrote. He's one of the longtime teachers at Spirit Rock. Working with Doubt, Deepening Faith, that's the name of the article. And he writes, doubt is one of the 5 classical hindrances common to us all. Meditators get to examine doubt from a unique perspective, exploring how the mind gets stuck in it and possible ways to be free of its hold. It's one of the most incapacitating mind states human can experience, since it suffocates our confidence and keeps us from taking risks. We feel helpless in its clutches. The mind can't see clearly. The image given in the scriptures is mud churned up in what had been clear water, but making it impossible to see. 2 things to keep in mind as we explore doubt. It is impersonal and impermanent. Remembering the impersonality of doubt means that it is not you, but a mind state which has come unbidden to visit you for a while. You didn't say, I think I'll have a good bout of doubt right now. The fact that you don't have control over your mind may seem discouraging, but actually within that understanding is the possibility of genuine release from the predicament. Since we don't have control over the mood that comes, it's a misperception to think that we should blame ourselves or take responsibility for this mind state, right? So we don't have to claim it. It's there. Doubt for us will arise because of whatever seeds we've planted in the past, right? Those tendencies have already been laid down. So when that tendency to be aversive, or that tendency to be greedy, or that tendency to be dull, or that tendency to be restless, or all 5 of those tendencies happen at a given moment, right? At this point, it's arising as an impersonal cause and effect. Those conditions were developed over many years of seeds being planted. Now it's expressing itself. When the supporting conditions are there in the moment, then doubt will arise. And the attitude, wisdom's attitude, should be something like, well, of course doubt's arising now. Like you're giving a public talk and you see a lot of people yawning or rolling their eyes or leaving, right? These sort of things. And so it would be a little bit inhuman for doubt not to arise. But the practice with doubt isn't to keep it from arising. The practice we have with doubt, or any of the afflictive mind states, is not to misunderstand it when it does arise. Oh yeah, it's just doubt. Of course. Oh, it's just the wanting mind. It's just lust, or it's just hate, or aversion, or fear, or anxiety. It's just that experience that the heart is having being known. And it feels like this. And the tendency, of course, is to not want to feel it, to not want to see it and feel it clearly. The tendency is to create some distance by thinking. We always want to address the pain, the weight, the difficulty. We have this wrong idea that we can think our way out of difficulty, which of course is just laying down more stress, because that desperate trying to figure out the truth so that I won't have any more doubt, like that actually establishes the doubt more deeply. Because if I have to fret about it, I must really be full of doubt. It's sort of like questions that have to be answered. Presumption. No, I need to know. Now we have Google, we can Google the answer. So it's really useful to realize that doubt can arise, questions can arise. Doesn't mean we have to do anything about the question that's arisen in the mind or the doubt that showed up, except to be clear, there's doubt. There is this question. There is this uncertainty. There is this ambiguity right now, this don't know mind, this uncomfortable feeling of, the lack of clarity. And there's always the option to just be with that experience. And thankfully, I'm sure you've noticed, hopefully you've noticed, all of these hindrances have the nature to arise and to cease without you or I needing a clever Dharma move to make it go away. Just being present in a way that isn't feeding the tendency, we will naturally, if we're patient, if we persist, we'll naturally observe, oh, there's no doubt. There was doubt, but now there isn't doubt. And this, it really, seeing the impermanent, impersonal, unsatisfying nature is what really changes our relationship. I give this example sometimes. This happened during a long retreat here where I'm at IMS, Insight Meditation Society. I was doing one of the 3-month retreats they have in the fall. And I was just doing some walking practice pretty early in the morning. I remember this distinctly, and I was pretty calm, and the mindfulness had some continuity. And there, in that continuity of present moment awareness, I don't know what it was. I might have been a little distracted, and then noticed that I was distracted, and maybe that, I think, was the trigger for that whole familiar pattern for me at the time to be full of doubt. Oh, I must be a bad meditator. I was just lost in thought, something like that. But the point was that there was enough continuity of mindfulness that there was an awareness of the mind being clear and stable and present. And then in a very short order, it was like this heavy, mildewy, smelly coat. I was weighted down by that mind state of doubt. And I just seeing it arise made it so obvious that it wasn't personal, that I didn't really do anything. It was still a pristine fall morning at IMS in the middle of Massachusetts. Excuse me, Massachusetts. There was still some good continuity of mindful awareness. But all of a sudden, this pattern arose because that tendency was already there in the mind. The momentum, the tendency to fill the mind with doubt, to look at the moment through the lens of doubt. I'm no good, won't be no good, or whatever that for you is, a common expression of doubt. It just showed up. But because there was some continuity of mindfulness to that transition from a mind without doubt to a mind with doubt was very clear. So it was very hard to imagine that I'm really that picture of doubt, the guy who doesn't know what the heck he's doing, because of how it arose seemingly out of nowhere. And the same thing when we're persisting with doubt or any of the hindrances, and then they just fade away or cease suddenly. But whether it's a slow fade or a sudden release, it's so important to be mindfully aware in that moment when you realize, oh, there's not doubt. So in a way, we should be excited when we catch, oh, the mind's spinning with doubt, or the mind's caught in aversion. And then just to inspire the heart to have that persisting present. Well, let's see if the Buddha's right, that these hindrances arise and pass away, that they're impermanent and impersonal, and that anytime the mind grasps or identifies, definitely it's going to be unsatisfactory. And the basic principle there is that when we can name or notice or acknowledge that there's doubt, it's a very simple way of creating some space of wisdom. Because the mind that can notice doubt or any of the hindrances, the mind that can recognize it and sustain some present moment awareness, oh, this is doubt, it feels like this, that mind isn't full of doubt, right? It's the same. The mind that knows there's anger is not angry. The mind that knows there's a lot of lust and it feels like this is not the lust. And that says something, that reveals something about the basic underlying potential of mindful awareness or wisdom awareness. It has this this inability to be stained by what's being known. And we use that image of the mirror. You can do something disgusting in front of a mirror, it will perfectly reflect it, but it won't be stained by your inappropriate behavior, whatever you do in front of that mirror. Nor will it be blessed by your really beautiful behavior. The mirror stays unstained regardless of what it's reflecting. So when, in a sense, we fall back and be the one who knows, oh, doubt is present, there's already some space in the mind. And that's an important thing to remember when you feel caught in one of these hindrances, really identified, really beginning to feel helpless, and that, the interesting thing is the reason the practice fails us in those moments when we're really caught in one of these hindrances like doubt is that we're not practicing. What we're practicing is identifying with the thought, I can't practice because I'm full of doubt. So we basically rationalize not being present. This is being known, right? We rationalize giving up. We rationalize being the victim. So of course, we're the victim because we're not doing the one thing that actually begins to alleviate the entanglement, which is that simple noticing, naming, acknowledging, recognizing, oh, this is doubt. This is the mind state of doubt, and there's the underlying feeling that goes with it. the unpleasantness of it. This is just something that arose due to causes and conditions, will pass away. As soon as those causes and conditions, the supporting causes and conditions, are no longer supporting it, you get caught up in some vortex, some afflictive mind state. We just had that clear, honest, truthful recognition. Oh, this is that difficult mind state. Feels like this. This is what happens sometimes when the appropriate triggers or supporting causes, then this shows up in the heart, in the mind, in the body. It feels like this. If I identify with it and spin with it, it can last for a long time. The whole system can get tied up into terrible knots. But if I remain aware and relaxed and simply acknowledging the simple, undeniable truth, this is something being felt. This is something being known. And I persist at that wise way of paying attention. And when I do get identified and I do get spun around, we can still turn that into gold by connecting the dots. Oh, look at that. I took the bait. I started to think. I got identified. I took it personally. And now the body, heart, and mind is feeling really burdened, really entangled. Oh, just like the Buddha said, you can feed these unwholesome states or you can starve them, depending on what we pay attention to. So what do we pay attention to that feeds doubt? Right? When we look at doubt a certain way, like, I need to know. I was saying that in the guided meditation or at the beginning, that presumption that any question that we ask, we should have an answer to. And, it's just interesting. I mentioned briefly, we now with our information in Google, we want to get the answer. We feel somehow incomplete with anything that's ambiguous or unknown. Well, that's a really good way to cause problems in our communities, in our important relationships, when we want to nail things down. No, I need to know how you feel about me. It's definitely a good way to push people away from us. Could you write that down? Exactly how you feel about me. What do you think about me? After the talk tonight, there will be a survey and you'll rate this talk for me because I want to know, is it slightly better than last time I spoke or worse? And the thing is, we think by defining everything, that certainty, that there's a way to get to certainty, to remove doubt, to remove ambiguity. We gravitate to the politicians who promise us certainty and truth, with a capital T, sometimes at least. Even if they're, sometimes the truth the politician is selling is, let's burn the thing down. And other times politicians are selling, we can fix this and make a utopia for ourselves. And then when people are a little bit ambiguous, remember, those of you old enough, remember Jimmy Carter, and he gave his famous talk about the malaise that was afflicting the United States. And people didn't want to hear that, even though it might have been really true. It's like, no, we just want certainty from our politicians. But as wiser human beings, we cultivate a taste for the truth. And things are uncertain and undefined. And we can relate to that. It's like one of my teachers, a Burmese teacher, Saida Ujanaka, well known, he's dead now, but teacher that I practiced with when I was in Burma for a long retreat. And he would say sometimes, isn't it true that on a really foggy day, the mind can be crystal clear? It's a really foggy day. So Isn't it true that when there's a lot of confusion in the mind, we can be really clear about the confusion? There's a fun book, maybe some of you read it. It came out a long time ago. It was called Ambivalent Zen by Lawrence Schoenberg, I think is his name. Let's see if I can find the quote from it. And he was a student of Kyudo Roshi, a Japanese Zen teacher. And he was complaining to his teacher, Kyudo Roshi, that just about being confused and can't decide. I forget what it was about, whether it was a relationship or a job or something like that. And this was his teacher's response to him. Can't decide? Oh, great decision, Larry-san. That's what he called him, Larry-san. My teachers say, if you confused, do confused. Do not be confused by confusion. Understand? Be totally confused, Larry-san. Then I guarantee no problem at all. And that's such a beautiful little teaching, like, well, maybe I can, maybe it's okay to be confused. Maybe I can relax with this ambiguity. Maybe the ground that is actually available for me, the certainty, is the simple acknowledgement, this is what's being known, this experience. And remember, doesn't even mean we know how to label the experience, but we know it's this experience right now that's being known, is being known. So we might have ambiguity, we don't know, like, is it lust in my mind, or is it aversion in my mind, or am I just restless? We don't have to have the right label. That's just more of that getting caught in the entanglement of doubt and the dependence on pretending that we're certain when we're not. We can just say this experience is being known. And if it's ambiguous, if it's uncertain, if it's confusing, if it's faint, then that's the experience that's being known. And the key is you really need to try this and to see how it really settles and stabilizes and begins to liberate practically, pragmatically in the moment, our heart. It actually works. And we won't really have faith in the power of wisdom and awareness unless we try it out when there are these afflictive states, whatever they might be. Ajahn Sumedho sometimes would ask us to do something like, have that phrase, you'd say, having the thought, so you'd repeat back. So, your mind expresses some doubt, and then you'd repeat that back in your mind so you can really acknowledge that this is the thought the mind just thought. And you'd say something like, having the thought that I'm no good, or having the thought, I'm never going to learn this meditation stuff. Oh, having the thought, I'm no good at this. And it feels like this. It was a thought that arose in the mind. And just to make sure I saw it, I'm going to think that thought again. Basically demonstrating to ourselves, we don't have to be afraid of a thought. We can have the thought of our own demise, our own humiliation, even our own death. That's a thought being known. And the key is, because our thoughts, we can whip up, especially if we've gone down the road of mental proliferation, we can certainly whip up scenarios about ourselves, about the world that are really dark, really scary. But the unending truth is, things are only as bad as they actually already are. Things aren't worse than they already are. They're just the way that they are. It's already this way. So the question is then, well, can I be here? Can I be open? Can I relax? Is it safe to relax and to be aware and to be honestly aware and to acknowledge? And we can actually check that out, even if we don't really know what's going on, because we do know that this is being known. This experience that's happening, that capacity to be reflectively aware, oh yeah, this is what the mind is knowing. This is what the mind, heart is feeling. We can always go there. It's kind of like the refuge that we chant at the beginning of our Buddhist studies, taking refuge in the Buddha and Dhamma. It's like being intimate, being open and intimate with the way it is a refuge. It works, and it allows for Sangha, this participation in the world that's arising out of being intimate with the way it is. So when we're confused, we do confusion. We're not confused by confusion. This is from Ajahn Brahm, who's a well-known British Buddhist monk in the Thai forest tradition. He wrote, doubt refers to the disturbing inner questions at a time when one should be silently moving deeper. So he's really talking about doubt more in a meditative sense in our meditation practice. Doubt can question one's own ability. Can I do this? Or question the method. Is this the right way? Or even question the meaning. What is this? It should be remembered that such questions are obstacles to meditation because they are asked at the wrong time and thus become an intrusion, obscuring one's clarity. Now, there may be time later, like at the end of the sit or talking with a good Dharma friend, where we might ask a question about our sit. But in the context of our formal practice, we're really orienting with this basic practice, recognizing the present moment. So if it's doubt that's arising in the present moment, we just recognize doubt as a mental phenomena. Or if it's pain in the knee arising in the moment, that's pain being known. If there's a strong not liking of the physical pain in the knee, that not liking is being known. If there's this strong desire to get up and leave, then we notice that. We don't wonder, we don't get entangled with the display of phenomena, whether it's mental phenomena or physical phenomena, sounds, sights, thoughts, emotion. It's just another thing in the forest, just the next thing that's being known. We really keep it at that level. Sharon Salzberg talks about, this tendency to doubt often is just a reflexive habit of impatience. And this is really true, like in terms of our formal practice, the kind of doubt that arises when we have the thought, nothing is happening. And then the thought, nothing has been happening for weeks, months, or even years in my meditation practice. Now, it doesn't mean that, it may be true that nothing's happening. And if we've been caught in some bad habit where we haven't actually been practicing, well, then of course nothing's happening. Because the proximate causes for a deepening, for basically, when we talk about insight, we're talking about seeing what we haven't seen before in terms of the nature of the mind and the nature of experience, seeing the empty nature, the impersonal nature, the changing nature, the unsatisfactory nature, sensing the possibility of freedom. If we're not learning anything, that might be because we're not practicing. But if our response to nothing's changing, nothing's being learned, is to think about whether we're practicing or not, to basically find a way to stop practicing and to be lost in thought about our practice, well, of course, we'll have good reason to have doubt. And it's really important to know the difference between thinking about practice and practicing. And so when in doubt, and this is really the most simple, profound antidote for doubt, check this out so you really get this Dharma move. When there's doubt, it could be about anything. Doubt about your marriage, doubt about your job, doubt about the kind of food you eat, whatever the doubt is about, just bring your attention to something in the present moment. So if you're walking, you could just bring the awareness, feeling the foot making contact each time it comes to the earth. That placing the hand, or placing the foot rather, placing the foot, and you're just connecting and knowing that experience of contact as the foot comes down on the floor or on the earth. And then after you get a little momentum, just ask, is there any doubt that this is being known? Or you can come back to the breath. It's so interesting to see how convincing the questions and the concerns and the doubt can be. It really can masquerade as profound wisdom. This uncertainty, this need to know, this wondering if I've got it all wrong. And instead of trying to answer or to address the doubt or the question on its own terms, you might find it so much more useful just to connect with the present moment. To use one of the anchors that you're familiar with, like coming back, feeling the whole body sitting, or opening to the experience of hearing, or coming back and connecting, sustaining awareness with some breaths coming in and out. But you might find that when you're really present with some sustaining awareness, then you'll notice this is a mind without any doubt. Not because you pushed away the question or the uncertainty or the doubt, but because you simply connected with the reality of the present moment. You realized breathing in is being known, or walking is being known, or hearing is being known. And you can just try that if you don't think that works, just bring your attention to some touch point in your body right now. Could be your sitting bones pressed up against the chair, or your hand touching your other hand. Just simply absorbing into that simple sense contact, awareness of pressure, touch. And in that continuing presence, just realize this is the mind that has no doubt. And it's surprisingly liberating to realize the mind that is free from doubt. It actually makes it so much easier to recognize many times, to recognize this is a mind that's free from doubt, right? And the Buddha gives us some instructions, some tasks. If doubt is present, one knows there is doubt in me. If doubt is not present, one knows there is no doubt in me. And one knows how the unarisen doubt can arise, how arisen doubt can be removed, and how a future arising of doubt can be prevented. So this is like this is the curriculum with doubt. With each of the hindrances, you could substitute aversion, wanting mind, dull mind, sleepy mind, restless mind. We want to know, is this hindrance present in the mind right now? Or is this hindrance not present in the mind? And so you could just, like this week, with any of the hindrances that we've been studying, but in particular doubt, just ask during the day, Is there doubt in the mind? You could even run through the hindrances. Any greed in the mind? And then if it really seems like there isn't, this may be the mind free of greed. It may be hidden still, and especially during the daily life, are the kind of quality of awareness may not be that stable. One of the things, that example I gave earlier, where I saw when I was doing walking practice in the middle of a long retreat, was that continuity of awareness, the absence of doubt previous to it arising, made it really clear when it arose. And because it was really clear when it arose, the mind, wisdom, saw how impersonal it was. And it really forever onward changed my relationship to doubt. Doubt has never been as believable because of that kind of an insight. So it's really good to, take advantage of the contrast, which means we need to know when doubt isn't there and when it does arise. And Bob, I'm just going to address your question. What do I do when the mind wants to race ahead and anticipate bad things that will come from the bad thing at hand?
I think you did. I think you answered.
Yeah, because it's thinking that that has to be answered is what creates the problem.
Yes, thank you. And I don't know if it's appropriate to put questions in the comment box like that, Mark.
Yeah, it can. I'll just ignore them when I'm too absorbed in the talk, but sometimes it catches my eye and I can address it.
Thank you.
Then Roseanne wrote, but aren't there times when having doubt on a big question is legitimate? Is that doubt a hindrance? And we know the answer, right? There is a skillful doubt. It'd be nice if we had two different words, but you could call unskillful doubt skeptical doubt, the kind of doubt that's characterized by leading the mind toward being disconnected. It's like, has an excuse not to practice because I got to figure something out first. And then we lose the thread of the practice. But there's a very appropriate doubt. I actually call this appropriate doubt wisdom, like the wisdom of not presuming that the mind should have a fixed opinion or that we're certain. We should always have a kind of openness. Like even if we have a lot of confidence about something, we shouldn't presume we've seen everything there is to see. My experience tells me that it's this way, but I'm still interested. I'm still learning. I'm not going to imagine I've seen everything there is to see about this. Yeah, I know this person really well, but I'm not going to fix them as if my idea of them is the truth. It's a work in progress. Me getting to know them is still a work in progress. I'm still open to my sense of this person evolving and changing as I have more experience. And that kind of openness and that lack of certainty and that curiosity is really essential to the practice. And yeah, I think it's, in common usage, we call that kind of a wholesome doubt, that I'm not going to presume I know. And I'm comfortable not knowing. Keeps us interested. Sharon Salzberg has, I think in the excerpt that I sent you all in the email today, just talks about that in terms of getting to know somebody. And, we don't want, like, we might have some, like, ooh, is this a person I want to spend time with? That kind of doubt. And we don't really know. We don't want to conclude one way or the other. We want to sort of pay attention. And yeah, just like whatever promotes an attentive openness. so that we're living our life as a learner instead of living our life trying to maintain some kind of certainty until it can't be maintained, and then we leap onto some other other certainty, other fixed view, thinking that that's what's gonna, save us. And of course, this Kathleen is asking about self-examination. Of course, we have doubt about ourselves in the same way. So everything I've said could just refer back to ourselves. Like, do you know that you're a good person or a bad person? Does it need to be one or the other? Seems like it's all over the place. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. And what's more interesting isn't to come to some conclusion, but to have a way of being that's onward leading to freedom. We've just wrongly associated freedom with certainty. Like, I feel free because I own the truth. As opposed to there's freedom and not being dependent on truth. And then all of a sudden I can have a much more honest, alive, nimble relationship with the present moment, because I no longer wrongly think that fixing on some truth, having some certainty, is really going to make me feel safe, because we end up having to defend it forever. And this is something we can experience viscerally, in a sense. The Buddha likens doubt to being on a dangerous road. Like, you have some wealth, I think the example the Buddha uses way back, the simile is, you're a rich merchant. You have a lot of expensive goods in your wagon, and you're in some desolate place, vulnerable to robbers, no one there to protect you, and you feel appropriately endangered. And that's the state of unskillful doubt, is the mind has whipped up a story that makes the mind feel unsafe. And then what does the mind do with that feeling of being unsafe? It tries to think about how unsafe I am. And another simile the Buddha uses, he likens it to somebody in the middle of a house that's burning down, and people come in to save this person, but the person says, no, I'm not leaving until I find out who started the fire, how did they start the fire, and where they started the fire. As opposed to doing the one thing that alleviates the heart of the stress. I do this sometimes because I am somewhat addicted to wanting to read the news and stay connected. And I mean, I say it that way, but it's really an unwholesome addiction. I just have to admit out loud. I mean, I don't think I'm that different than usual, but I really feel it deeply, like, just, and then when I'm done, when I finally turn my attention away from the New York Times or whatever it is I'm reading, shut the computer off, then I notice that the mind wants to keep feeding on all the problems, all the uncertainty, all the anxiety about what is unresolved, like what the future is going to be, how this is going to play out. And luckily, in a way, it can, not suffering as much keeps me addicted, because I can unhook, which is I come back to the present moment. Initially, being present means I have to feel what it feels like to have been reading the news for 30 minutes or whatever the length of time was. And so whatever got whipped up, whatever's moving, whatever identification with this or that there is, it has to be felt. And that's unpleasant. But it's better to feel it right after. Like the Buddha says this in some fashion, that if you're going to do something unskillful, it's better to feel it, to feel its unskillfulness. So either immediately when you're caught in doubt, to know you're caught in doubt. So the kind of karmic fruit of being identified with doubt is being experienced in real time. But if not in real time, then after you've turned away from the mental proliferation of the doubt, and then you're just feeling the repercussions in your body and mind. Oh, this is the mind, heart, body that was previously caught up in doubt, and it feels like this. It's like the war zone. This is what's left over. Okay, let me have an honest, compassionate presence with what it feels like. And then all of a sudden, instead of spinning, it's Buddha being intimate with Dhamma. The capacity to be awake, to be present, is choosing to be present with what's real, what's predominant, which is what's left over, having been spun about, identified with the news for a while, and just being with that. And then feeling the rightness, the healing that comes. There's no doubt in being present in this mindful way with the reverberations of having been identified with the news. There's no doubt. Oh yeah, it feels like this now. This is the natural effect of having been identified. It feels unpleasant like this. And being aware of the unpleasantness is to be, to some degree, if not to a great degree, liberated from the unpleasantness. Being aware of pain is not the same as feeling caught and oppressed by the pain. And that's the transition from turning away from feeding on the news and feeding on the reactivity to then turning inward and looking, oh, this is what got stirred up. This is what got triggered. This anxiety, this, whatever. And it feels like this. And there's that healing that can come. Yeah, fear is both, someone asked about fear, is that the same as doubt? Shelly next week will be giving the last talk in our 6-week course on the hindrances, 5 hindrances. But there are many variations, combinations really of these 5 tendencies of wanting, not wanting, dullness, restlessness, and doubt. Multiple hindrance attacks, someone once called them. And so Shelly next week is going to be talking about some of the other common afflictive states, torments of our heart and mind that we have to learn to be present with and to be wise with and to not be seduced. Because whatever the afflictive state is, whether it's fear or doubt or anxiety or depression, or whatever it might be, jealousy, envy, fixed view, self-righteousness, right there, we could probably generate more than 100 different afflictive states of mind. And they're all basic, different expressions of greed, hatred, and delusion. Those are considered to be the underlying roots of unwholesomeness. Yeah, and Sean's question about wanting to know, wanting to see the big picture, wanting to have an answer. But see, there's a huge presumption that the world makes sense in the way that we think it makes sense, or that the world can be figured out. It's kind of like what the Buddha said about karma. Trying to understand karma will make you crazy. It's one of the imponderables in the Buddhist tradition. But we can know enough that what's happening is lawful. Lawful in the sense of things, everything, internally in terms of our emotions and mind states, externally in terms of the big movements in our world. Everything unfolds according to causes and conditions. So a lawful doesn't mean it's skillful. It just means given everything that's in motion, that things can't be other than the way that they are. And of course, the interesting thing that should come to mind is, well, how do we participate in a lawful conditional world? And this is the discovery from the Buddhist life that he shares with us. He says there is a way to participate. It's called, in our Buddhist code, Buddha being intimate with Dhamma. Waking up, being intimate with this embodied reality of the present moment. And your response, which is Sangha, will be wise, precisely because of your skill you've developed, you've trained yourself in being intimate, awake, open. And to really be awake, open, connected means we have to abandon the need to know. Now, of course, all the teachings of the Buddha, they're thoughts too. But if they're useful thoughts, they're thoughts that direct the mind to the practice of opening and connecting and being present. If they're not, if they're just thoughts that lead you to becoming an expert in Buddhist philosophy, you'll probably suffer. Because even Buddhist philosophy, it's really an elegant, profound philosophy, but just clinging to that won't make us happy. And we'll endlessly debate people who have slightly different views than us, or whatever. It will be endless. But if we use the teachings to be Buddha, being intimate with Dhamma, being awake and open to the way it is, and letting our choices, letting the way that we're participating, what we do and what we don't do, letting it naturally arise out of being present in the moment. So when we have a difficult interaction with our teenage child, or we have a difficult thing at work, or we're falling in love with something really beautiful is happening in our life, and we have doubt about how I should handle it, you might just explore, well, maybe I'll practice being Buddha, being intimate with Dhamma, and I'll see if Sangha arises from that. So instead of needing some certainty about what I should or shouldn't do, doesn't mean that it's bad to think about things or even plan. But really what we want to set in motion is, I know it works. I'm going to be present. And when we're present, all that we've learned and all that we've thought about in the past, those impressions are going to be there. We don't have to try to hold on to them when we move into the particular situation that we have doubt about or we want to be skillful in. Just being radically open and interested and present with whatever's happening in terms. You don't have to personally go through the files to see what will be useful to help you find your way with this particular situation in your life. It just shows up. It's one of the things that make us so grateful for the practice. I'll just end with a little bit about faith. And really faith in this sense, and Sharon Salzberg writes about this so well. You could read her book on faith. It's titled Faith. This is actually from another Western teacher, a Buddhist monk, Ajahn Jayasaro. He's a British person who's been a Buddhist monk for many decades now. And it's called Faith on the Quest. And you should be able to find that article online, Faith on the Quest. And he writes, it's common among Buddhist practitioners, however, to realize that their profound trust and confidence in the truth of the Buddhist teachings is not matched by faith in their own capacity to realize that truth. This lack of faith in our potential for awakening is crippling and unwise. The doubt is based on a mistaken way of looking at ourselves. Swallowing the myth of the independent I gives us spiritual indigestion. We can't force ourselves to have faith, and we don't need to. We merely start paying more attention to our own experience. And then a little later in this article, he writes, our discouragement in the practice frequently comes from trying to imagine how this limited I could possibly realize the unlimited. How could this bounded self realize the unbounded? Having posed a question based on a false premise that the I is real, we naturally conclude with a false answer, that my realizing Nibbana will never happen. In other words, how could little old me ever realize something so marvelous? The gap seems too wide. You or I grasp. That's the wrong idea. There's something here and now, but that desperate and ongoing, neurotic attempt to own, to have, to get rid of, that's the cause for the endless uneasiness in our hearts, the anxiety, the dukkha. So the takeaway for doubt is, just in terms of your own experimentation this week, just find something your heart is willing to truly connect with, and then connect. And then sustain that present moment connect to the afflictive state of doubt when you do something with a full, relaxed presence. I mean, we kind of know that intuitively, like when we really been spinning, we go take a walk. That allows us to be a little bit more connected. Or we'll go cook some soup. Or we might go sit. But I see my time's up. Of course, we could do a whole 8-week class on doubt. And I really encourage you to have conversations with your Dharma friends around doubt. You can send your questions to Shelly. They might be able to address them in next week's class. But also remember, you'll have small groups next week. So bring your own discoveries, your own learnings to those small groups at the end of next week's session. That will be the last class until our winter class. So keep that in mind as well. Many things coming up that you might be interested in, including our annual Day of Remembrance that Kyoko Katayama and Patrice Kelsch lead. That will be on Sunday, the 30th of October, 1:30 to 3:30. Shelly's leading a day-long retreat this Saturday. You can join in for that. And Shelly and I now have our registration open for the year-end retreat that both of us will be leading December 26th to December 31st. It's a really important annual event. We've been doing it now for 30 years. This will be our 30th year doing the year-end retreat at Common Ground. We do it in the building at the city center, but people can also do it online. And then, of course, people in town, you go home at the end of the day instead of sleeping at the center. So take care, everybody. Wishing you a good week of practice and looking forward to connecting down the road.